So, Cryptic Studios just had a stream covering a few things. They were mainly running through Saha and answering some questions from the audience. So let's cover the more important things. Just the first thing they discussed, for those of you on console you might be interested, FOV. The reason why you cannot increase it is because it reduces your FPS. And there's a limit how low FPS you can have on a console before Sony and Microsoft don't allow the game to be on that console. Since there are a lot of older consoles, they have to cater to those, but they said they might add an option for people who have newer consoles to increase their FOV. But let's move on to more interesting topics. The Wonderous Bazaar and the trade bar discount. There was a few notes on that. I'm just gonna let the dev talk for herself and you can hear what she has to say.
Game Killer's Paz wants to know if the Wondrous Bazaar sale is coming again.
It is. This run with the Astro Lockbox does not have a Wondrous Bazaar sale. There will be one coming. I actually literally just was looking at that schedule. So we actually shifted it forward a week recently. I'm not going to give you the exact date. It will show up on the calendar. We do have a Wondrous Bazaar sale, a trade bar sale. We have Guild Mark stuff. We got everything coming. You should see it soon.
So really that's that. Soon. Currently cannot see it on the calendar. Probably will. We can see out as far as the end of September. It could well be then in October. Now, on other news, people were wondering, when is the Paladin Re-work coming? Well, this is what they had to say.
We don't put the ETA on it, but they are in active development. To quantify, when I say they're in active development, means that we have staff assigned and actually working on those. They're scheduled, like, it may not be literally today, but we chunk out our work in roughly 3-month increments.
Oh, he was working on it literally last week. So
Paladin updates Paladin updates are in the current sort of quarterly chunk of work that we are working on. So yes, the Paladin updates are in progress.
Yeah, the
sooner than you might worry, but not as quickly as you might hope.
So yeah, they're in the works. Probably not till module 27 in November or something. They did say that the next module will launch before Christmas. I assume, like last year with the Nork Dark Reaches, around end of October, November. But somebody asked why? Why did the Paladin get chosen to get a rework over, let's say, the other classes? And again, let's have a listen to what they said.
How do you decide that Paladin needs a rework? We kind of look at information. We look at popularity classes, viability of classes. We also look at a degree of things like bug reports, etc. And we kind of pick some stuff based on those when we know that there's either performance options or just fun factor options, etc. And so the Paladin, we feel that while the class is powerful, it's not popular, and given that it fulfills vital support functions within Neverwinter as both a healer and a tank, we would like it to be more popular, and we're hoping that if we show it some love, we will help make it more popular and more fun to play. And the more tanks and healers that we have in Neverwinter, especially for group content, the shorter queue times it is for everyone.
So yeah, due to Paladin being truly support, a tank or a healer, not really DPS, there's not a whole lot of people choosing it. So they want to increase that popularity. They want to increase the likelihood people will choose it by, I guess, giving it some buffs. Then it was asked, what about the other healers? If you're going to be buffing the Paladin healer, what about the Warlock healer? And well, again, let's hear what they had to say.
Lots of folks are asking if we have any intention of looking at any changes, or more specifically buffs, for the Soul Weaver Warlock class.
We are looking at some broader healing updates. We did, obviously, with the Bard Minstrel, we did a number of updates to that healer. But as we're looking at the Paladin, specifically the healing paragons of the Paladin, we're looking at healers as a whole and trying to make sure that we achieve a level of parity and ease of use between all of them. We're aware that different healers excel in slightly different areas, and to be blunt, we are aware that clerics are a little too easy, especially in 5 dungeon or 5-person content where they're so given the strength of some of their abilities. Specifically, Healing Word is a standout, I wouldn't say problem, but it overperforms for what it does right now compared to what Warlocks can achieve with Soulstorm, and compared to what Paladins, for example, can achieve with Divine Shelter, etc. And it's likely that as we look at the Paladin healing, we're also going to be trying to take some quick looks at Warlock healing and try to achieve a little bit of a better parity. But that being said, fair warnings that Healing Word is sort of on the list because we feel that for what it does, it's a little too easy. It's too much of a do everything I need to do button, and it kind of makes the Cleric class not really have any downsides. They have very strong single target healing with things like Intercession and their tap heals, and they have very strong group healing with Healing Word, especially in their daily, etc. So it's a little too much. They can kind of do everything that a healer can. They don't have some of the weaknesses that the other healers do, and that's something that we would like to look at shoring up a bit too. So we'll likely look at buffs for Warlocks and Paladins and Soul Weavers, and Oathkeeper and whatnot, but potentially some small changes in particular to Healing Word on the Cleric side to make
Now,
it
just to be
less of
clear,
a do everything button.
Now, just to be clear, because chat just started panicking, you're not planning on nerfing Cleric anytime soon. You're just planning on making the other healing abilities more on par, right?
Like I said, we're not looking at changing any of the Cleric's abilities, but in particular, Healing Word is one of the ones we may look at in terms of combination of things like its duration as well as what it does, because like I said, the power of it right now exceeds that. Now, that being said, we expect to have to bring up most of the other heals, especially sort of raid-wide heals or group-wide heals, ones that allow you to heal lots of players that are very far away from you. That's a key thing for things like some of our trials, some of our dungeons where your players are all scattered about and trying to dodge mechanics, which is what we want them to do. But in particular, like Soulstorm doesn't have the ability to do that, and Vampiric Embrace is something that has a very high cost. It's not a very efficient spread out heal. So that's what hinders Soul Weavers a lot. And while Paladins have Divine Shelter, which has also a very large radius, it does not have the raw healing output in terms of just numbers, even including the shield, that you get out of Healing Word. And so that's kind of the problem. The Healing Word has a massive range, it has a massive radius, it has a very long duration, and so like I said, it kind of does all of the things that we want without any of the sort of downsides that we see with some of our other abilities. So we have to kind of figure out what we want to do there with that and make sure that we don't remove the Cleric's ability to heal large groups, because we build our big boss fights around that mechanic, but we also don't just want, the one button does everything for you kind of solution, which to some degree Healing Word's close to that, which is what we're not happy about.
Yup, you heard it. Cleric may very well get a few adjustments with its Healing Word, potentially toning it down a little bit. But on the more positive news, Warlock should be getting a bit of adjustments to their Soulstorm, so they're better at healing lots of players who are kind of spread out. And Paladin will get a few adjustments with that as well, most likely. Buffs to improve its Divine Shelter a bit. But another thing they covered was the Barbarian tank. They did acknowledge that it struggles a bit compared to the other two tanks. And here's what Brett had to say. FYI, he does play a Barbarian and says he has completed Master Trials before on both DPS and tank.
They're referring to Barbarian Sentinels, which is the Barbarian tank. They are good in some ways and bad in others, and they prove to be the most challenging of our tanks to play, specifically in boss fights. The problem being is that they have awkward routes towards generating lots of threat on a single target compared to just our other tanks. Other tanks generally have more accessible and obvious options for, hey, cool, I needed this boss to attack me, how do I do that? And the Sentinels have a much more obtuse route, and they can also just sometimes not get a whole lot of threat this sort of thing. So that's something that we know, and we're going to be looking at hopefully in the future. There's a couple of solutions we've talked about internally to it, but I think the goal for that is to try to make them more accessible. That being all said, Barbarian Sentinels are actually better in certain areas for sustained sort of multi-target threat generation, as well as the ways that their stamina regenerates for the block, specifically with the Rage and Rally feat, actually gives them more effective absorb against a lot of targets than the other tanks sometimes get as well too. So they struggle in fights where it's like big boss just doing lots of damage to the tank and doing tank busters on the tank, but they excel a little bit better in multi-target fights where there's multiple things and they get a chance to use feats like Rage and Rally, which give them a lot of free stamina regeneration. So we like the fact that they feel a little bit different than the other two tanks, but we don't like the fact that so much of our content is just, okay, we need you to tank this big boss and we need you to use defensive options to try to help for the party. And Sentinels don't have those. Their tool set is very different, and I feel like they're missing like defensive party options, and they feel like they're missing solid ways of mitigating generating single target boss damage as well as just generating lots of threat on a single target. Now, if they get things rolling, Primal Fury allows them to generate tons of threat, like just obscene amounts of threat. But that takes them a while to get to that point. There's like a tipping point where they're not generating any threat, they're generating huge amounts of threat. So we may have to address that as well too. You know, they can generate absurd amounts of threat under the right circumstances, but they have a lot of usability in generating it in the first few minutes of a fight.
So that's pretty good news from a Barbarian tank side. The devs understand the struggles that, yeah, it takes a while for the threat to get going, and a lot of the content is based around those single target boss fights where the Barbarian tank struggles with that initial threat. On top of that, having to sacrifice so much like survivability for that threat. But they do have the capabilities of a ton of survivability, more than other tanks even, like you said. It's just that initial threat is very rough for that Barbarian. Anyway, that's pretty much it for the stream and what they covered. Outside of that, they were just, messing around with some Saha and a bit of banter here and there. You can watch the whole thing if you want for yourself, over an hour long, and some giveaways throughout as well. But hopefully this is somewhat insightful, and we'll see what happens. Special thank you to all these channel members for their added support, and we'll see you guys around. Goodbye for now.